Hey, you summoned a lesser maker. In this video, we're going to do a deep dive on stonework. I'm not just going to tell you how I'm doing it, but why, so that when you're making your own custom builds, you're going to know what materials to use and how for whatever shape of building you're making. Stonework was something I actively avoided. I was really frustrated with the end result I was getting or how much time it was taking. We're going to cut out some individual bricks, not because I like it, but to give you guys a benchmark. I think most people start off doing it this way, and if I don't give you this to compare it off of, you won't know which texture ends up looking better. So let's start there. We're going to demonstrate this on my 3.5 foot Mordheim board. This is built off of a Rapunzel's tower, and I'm going to take off one of these doors and add a turret or a tower. And we're going to kind of demonstrate these different techniques on a buttress that we're going to attach to it. To glue all this stuff together, I'm using Great Stuff foam sealant, and it's a really good multi-purpose glue, and it also fills in all the gaps to make sure the glue is getting a lot of surface area. I'm building all this to give myself a really good foundation to put a bunch of bricks on top of. Silhouette is dependent on a good foundation. I'm cutting out all these bricks to be around 15 millimeters long, 5 millimeters high, and 5 millimeters wide. I'm making these with some offcuts of scrap XPS foam. I get mine off of Amazon, and the link to that product is going to be in the description. I don't get a huge board from Home Depot because I don't have the space for that, so hopefully this will help you source some materials that are a little easier to handle. Once you're done cutting these out, all you have to do is put all these bricks in the same container as a couple rocks, and I recommend using a lump of concrete as well, because that has a much more grittier texture, and when you shake it all around in the same container, it's going to round out all the edges and give the bricks uneven texture that's going to really pick up paint well. The heavier and the more textured your rock, the faster this will go. My container did break this time, so I had to switch it over to a different one. I grabbed this container because it was a cylinder and it was a harder plastic, so it did tumble the bricks a bit better, more like a washing machine. I'm not a fan of this method because of how long it takes. Because bricks typically are pretty square, it makes me want to lay them in even rows. I'm going to show you my preferred method for laying individual bricks in this type of method. So I think a lot of us have foam core lying around. And this is a really good way of using some scrap foam core in certain shapes that aren't really usable in other ways. So all I'm going to do is make this into strips, much like the bricks. But for this, I'm making cobblestones. So I don't have to be as precise on the widths. I can just kind of let it cut however it cuts. To get the paper off pretty efficiently, I just kind of peel it like a banana. All right, so now that I have some strips that have no paper on it, we're just gonna cut it in the same way in the other direction, just randomly. Now these aren't bricks, so I tend to try to cut these into squares a little bit more than rectangles, but any shape works. So that's kind of the benefit of this method. For all these methods, I'm gluing my stuff down with hot glue because I prefer the speed of tacking everything down. And then for a permanent bond, I go over everything with a PVA and a black paint mix. This just helps speed up the process, and it's just the way I prefer to do things. Another reason I prefer this cobblestone method is you get to use bigger pieces of foam, so it tends to go by faster. And because all of these are irregularly shaped, I don't have to be neat about it. I can just kind of try to make it look like it's a structure rather than trying to make my bricks in even rows. Okay, so finally, let's go to the punch tool. This is my favorite way to do bricks and stonework in general. Let's start off by making the tool. I'm using an old brush for this technique. First thing I do is I pick a brush that's been heavily used. I'm going to be using my bench vise because it's so much easier to do, but you can also do this with pliers. I start off by crimping the fillet long ways, and then I clamp only the bristles, and then I pull it out. There were some bristles in the fillet still, so then I just put it back into the clamp and pulled out the remainder. After that, I just go to my workbench and I pull out some pliers, and then I crimp the tool into a rectangle. Or you could do this in any shape. I've also done this in a cobblestone way, but this is a stamp that's going to be repeated over and over again. Having the same shape cobblestone doesn't make a lot of sense. Before you punch your brick, you want to add a texture. I use a lump of concrete, and typically I would do this flat on the table before gluing everything together. And that's why you should do it flat. The whole idea of punching the brick is to make it so that there's only one grout line between each brick. So I fit the fillet into the previous grout, and then I kind of roll the tool over to the next brick, kind of riding that grout line. This doesn't just make it so there's only one grout line, but that each row of bricks is straight, which makes this super easy and super fast. I think this method looks better than the individual bricks, but they both have their strengths and weaknesses. The next thing we do is I coat everything with a PVA glue and a black paint mix. I tacked everything together with hot glue, but that's not a really great permanent bond, so the PVA glue will seal the foam and make it all stick together. After that, I'm going to paint everything in a yellow just to make it look like a really dark limestone. I like this for medieval cities because it means I don't have to paint the grout line and don't have to do anything like that, because limestone water damage tends to be a really dark color and it weathers up really well. All right, so this is just the basics of getting into stonework. This process really freaked me out for a long time, and it kept me away from making some things that looked really cool. And honestly, the thing that I need to impart on you is just try it. It's not as hard as it might look. And I think the combination of all these techniques really makes a building look really great. But any one of these works awesome too. And I think it's probably worth saying, like, the foam core technique that I came up with, I didn't learn from a video. I just experimented and tried to replicate something I saw from reference photos. So don't be afraid to take some ideas from this and apply it in different ways and try something new. And if you have different ways to do stonework on your terrain, let me know in the comments, because I would appreciate knowing it, and I'm sure others would as well. So thanks so much for watching, and I hope this helped you make some cool things. Have a good one.